in the email that you get on Sunday evening, it'll have a video of the forum. So you can watch that. And Connie. Indeed, who is Julian? And why is she point number 4? So we're right here now. We're about to Pat.
Just curious if it sounds like a lot of the individual dualists getting work with love. Do you have an idea that the pairs that come together is a common goal or something that defines the mission of the church, or is it an individual?
So the question is about, there's a lot of this working of love in our lives. Am I imagining this is going to lead to sort of like a parish, like emergence of a parish vision about where we might go? We do have right now a parish strategic plan which the vestry has been working on. And so that's part of the content that's being offered to you throughout the parish life. And you may choose to participate that in a particular way unique to you based on this program. Now, should we have, you never know when you open up to prayer and reflection what's going to happen. So it could be that Zoom group decides that we need to have an ABC ministry, whatever it is, or it's like a lot of energy, then we can explore that later on. Like the end of this is not clear except the idea of discerning of vocation in the parish, discerning of ministry. Which is, again, it's about God loving the world through you. Jim, what do we have from chat?
The question was raised, how are we going to address shame in our life about our life history?
So a really good question. So there's a sense that as we look at our life history, there could be some stuff that we don't really want to look at. The first thing is that each of you is an expert on thinking about your own life. So the first thing is, if there's a place that you don't want to go and don't feel you want to go, well, then don't go there. All right? If you recognize that there's this part of your life that's very difficult, I'm not commanding you to get into it. Just find the degree to which you want to look at your life and stay with that. And secondly, what you share, this came up in our previous forum, what you share is you don't have to share the most intense stuff. I'm not asking that, but you might choose to bring to the group, I think I can share just this little bit here. And the prompts for reflection and sharing will include that kind of care around, this isn't an encounter group from the 1970s. We're not getting all crazy together, right? There's no pastoral supervision, there's no kind of we don't have therapists on hand to greet you after the group and all that kind of thing. You're in charge of what you want to reflect on, and you're in charge of what you want to bring. Now, if there's a sense of some difficulty or some shame that emerges in this that is difficult, then one can always contact the clergy here in the pastoral care team to have a conversation around that. Part of the transformation we're looking for is there is that thing in my past, like St. Peter in denying Christ, but that becomes the ground of my mission in proclaiming Christ. So there is that touching on a little bit of what might be difficult. But again, I really need to ask you to be the experts on what you choose to go into. I hope that meets that question. It's a very good question. Lisa.
It's just I guess a little bit of a follow-on to that question. Can you give a sense of what that gathering time looks like, the sharing time? That might help people figure out.
Right. So the homework in this first week is going to be what ministry attracts you now at St. Matthew's, and why do you think it does? Just to start with that. We're going to come back to that in week 5, but it starts there. And then it's going to ask you, has there been a relationship in your life when you have experienced love in a way that's enabled you to love others, right? Or can you think of an instance in your life or somebody else's where some kind of hurt has actually made you more compassionate or more caring for others? That's the kind of question that's going on. And so then when you come to the meeting, whether it's a private partnership or the Zoom meeting or in person, the questions will be kind of like, well, first of all, introduce yourselves and agree on confidentiality and how we listen to each other in the group and some kind of careful structuring of that. But then just share what came up for you in your reflection. Was there a person in your life who loved you in a way that helped you to love others? Can you think of something in your family where somebody took some of their hurt and used it for good in the world? And also just sharing, I think I'm really drawn to shawl ministry. I don't know why. I like to knit, but not really well, So just it's on that level. And so the second week is just kind of the homework for week 2 is just write about your life. Take it in 10-month periods and just write gently about your life. And you may have something in there, you're like, I'm really scared of sharing that. Listen to that. So when you come together for that small group, it could be that you share about this and you share about that, but you really don't want to share about that, so don't share about it. You're the expert. You're in charge. Anything else about the program? This sound okay, Pat?
Thank you to you.
That's nice, thank you. I just, I kind of find that in the church, we every week you get a sermon, God forbid, and you get all kinds of profound thoughts. And so you can be that, but we don't take enough time to reflect on our lives and how we actually are. How might God actually want to love the world through me? What does that mean? So our lives are like hard clay, and the rector's throwing seed on the clay, and the rector's saying, God damn it, it's not growing. Or we say, well, let's go and get a program, and we go to the nursery and we get a bush and we stick it in the ground, and we look at that, looks great, look at that, it's doing great. But it dies, of course, So part of what we're doing is I think a lot of loving attention to ourselves and listening to each other. I mean, I was listening to Jim von St. Paul talk about his crazy life at Shrove Tuesday and going to Caracas, out of Germany and all over the world. And we have amazing stories here. And even if we just learn on that level about each other and where we've been and what we've done, that's profound. Right? So it's just digging the soil. Just digging the soil a little bit, turning it over. And my mentor in these things said, you don't have to go for the full nuclear option when you share. In fact, don't share the full nuclear option in the group. Share that with your therapist. Share the thing that feels right to you. Just the fact that it's there is a great start. I'll pass on that. Wow, I don't know. So we have a few minutes, about 10, 15 minutes. I want to talk about Julian a little bit, because Julian, first of all, she's my specialty, so it's pretty easy to talk about the first Sunday of Lent, getting things ready, but she also connects with this program in a really special way. Because part of what I'm doing with you and inviting you to love on your life a bit really comes from my being influenced by Julian and her experience. Julian of Norwich was a 14th century mystic and theologian in England. She's the first woman to write a book that it still exists in the vernacular. She's considered one of the sort of top 2 or 3 theologians in the whole Church of England tradition, going back to the start of Christianity in England. She's considered to represent sort of the quintessence of being Anglican and the Anglican spiritual tradition. So she's really at the core of things. And Julian is interesting for this program for a couple reasons. One, She did her theology not thinking in a linear way, making a system of truths and then importing them to us, like a systematic theologian would, writing a book about God is the first chapter, about you is the second chapter, about Christ is the third chapter. But Julian's whole theological venture, and what made it so creative, is that she engaged with what was confusing and mysterious and contradictory in her experience of her life and herself and the world and the church and what she knew of God. So she shares with you this like struggle of trying to come to some kind of clarity about her own life experiences and how God related to them and how that related to the theology of the church. The second thing that's cool about Julian is that after she had mystical experiences of God's love, so her heart was turned over to God's love when she was 30 years old, she quickly wrote down what's called the short text. And this was an account of this was my experience of God, what I call a spiritual autobiography. And she wrote this down. Dunk, 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 dunk. And then 20 years later, she came out with the long text, which is basically the short text changed in some ways, plus 3 times more theological material and then pastoral material about how to go on living a good Christian life, given this experience of God's love. Now, that reason why that is so cool and what makes me really happy is because we have the short text and then the long text 20 years apart, what we get to see is how Julian started and then how she developed over 20 years, how she tweaked the short text, and how she reported her own spiritual life later on. So, for instance, when Julian starts the short text, she talks to you about her devotional life when she was young. She says, when I was young, I wanted 3 gifts of God. Don't freak out when I say these things, just stay with me. She wanted a vision of the Passion, which was common for 14th century medieval people, right? Or more common than it is for us. She wanted a near-death illness. And that's not so strange. I mean, you hear about somebody has a car accident, right? And they're like, I realized I was going to die, so I had to live a different way. And she wants that near-death illness, she says, to purify her, to live more to God's glory. And she wanted the Passion so that she could be a true friend of Jesus and understand what he experienced. Kind of cool. And she wanted to be wounded with contrition, compassion, and longing. Now, whatever you do, don't start thinking, that's bizarre. Don't go there quite yet. It is bizarre. That's not the point. The point, if we can empathize with this young Julian, is she starts out wanting to love God and her neighbor. And she feels that she is unable to, no matter how hard she barks orders at herself, no matter how much she reads the lives of the saints, which we know she did. She knows she can't change. Like she really can't grow in love. So she has this desire to be more loving in the world, to be more truthful, but she knows she can't. Well, thank God, that's how we all are, right? So she wants God to intervene in her life in dramatic ways to make her better. And if you empathize with this a little bit, what you see is a self in opposition to itself. I am this way, I don't want to be this way. I want to be better, but I can't make myself better. I need God to do something radical with me. So I'm this way, I want to be a different way, but I can't do it. And I don't like who I am, right? That's underneath all this. So Julian has an experience of God's love coming to her in great compassion and intimacy, suffering with her, and I'm skipping over all of that. That got things changing. 20 years later, she writes in the long text, she says, all of us in this life, we're a muddle of well and woe. And sometimes we're like Jesus, basically we're close to God, we can love and be loved, truthful. So sometimes she says we're like Adam, and we're nothing but misery in ourselves. And we can't even control this. And it goes up and down. And we're loving and not loving, and we're good and we're bad, and we're in this muddle of well and woe, she says. It's just part of who we are, and that's okay because we're loved. And so by the end of it, we don't have a woman where she starts out trying to change who she is to meet some ideal state, barking orders at herself to get better. We have a woman who's been loved to a place where she can be open to the full breadth of her experience, the good and the bad, and to know that all of that is held in God's love. That's the actual change that she goes through. And that correlates with this program in all kinds of interesting ways. I hope you can see some of those connections. She says, so what are we to do with this great muddle, this great wonderment of feeling that we have in us? She says, well, Christ is with us. And about the shame question, Julian directly talks about shame as preventing us from letting God love us. God wants to draw us out of shame. So she says things like, your sin is behovely, it's going to be beneficial because it's going to be used by God to open your heart and compassion to this world and to other human beings. So even what you think is most godless and dreadful, perhaps in your life, God can use to release compassion in you into this world. And your sin, she says, will be your glory. Because your sin is the place where God's mercy and love is revealed through you. Doesn't that stink? I was going to use a sharper word. Like, I kind of want God to be shown through me about how intelligent I am and how good I do. But what if when I get to heaven, like, people are like, oh, look, God forgave him. I see mercy all over that guy. I'm like, yeah, I guess you do. It's a different way of seeing. So I wanted to offer you a little bit about Julian, just because she's kind of the patron saint of this program. Her book is The Revelations of Divine Love. If you're interested, just come to me. I can get you a copy. But she does have this beautiful process of sharing with us how she actually was in her life, unhappy with herself, dissatisfied, just wanting God to do something. In the course of a near-death illness, God does come in and open her heart in a new way to love. And then that kicks off a whole process of, in her case, questioning, interrogation, wonderment, the mystery of herself, who she is, leading to this place of just really being open and acceptant of the flow of her experience. And Julian, in her time, was then known as a wise person you could go to counsel for. We have a record of Marjorie Kemp going to talk to Julian in Norwich because she was the wise lady in Norwich, the saint in Norwich. So in terms of this program, Julian had strengths of education, she had strengths of learning, she had strengths of an anchor hold in which she lived, which gave her authority. As a woman, she could actually speak as loudly as a priest to people about their spiritual lives. And then she had, the kind of the wounding of these experiences that led her into this life of prayer. Those came together and being able to greet others with real compassion and real wisdom. And that was her ministry. So we do plan to build some anchor holds on the back of the church after this program. There's only going to be 3, so get your orders in quickly. But so that's Julian. And any questions about Julian? We have a few minutes. Maybe I wanted to inspire you a little bit. I'm kind of handing you like a trowel today, and you're going to sort of scratch away at your life a bit. We're not going to dig very deep. We don't have to go down to the depths. We don't have to double dig, French dig our gardens. That's hard. Maybe we're just going to clear a little patch this Lent. We're just going to dig a little bit into our lives and then imagine how God's love touches us in our lives. It's actually really simple. It's just making space to give our lives attention. which I'm invested in. Hayes.
I've got a question about next steps and forming study groups. I'm reminded of when I was in Little League. Somebody said, "Okay, you choose. You want, I'll choose I want." And by the time you get to the end, somebody feels left out. Just feels really bad about it. Everybody feels bad for him or her. So how do we form a group without going through that kind of phenomenon?
Was that your experience, Hayes? So it was totally my experience.
Well, I'm ashamed to admit it.
I was a great long distance runner, but when it was like kickball, it was like the girls got picked first, and I'm like, I'm here too. So when you sign up, when you go to the online portal to sign up for the program, you're given 3 choices. One, you can find somebody else in the parish you want to partner with this. That's up to you, right? So maybe you can find somebody this morning you want to do this with. Secondly, you can sign up for the Zoom small group, which again is on Zoom, Thursday nights. And then when you come to that, you're going to be just assigned to 2 other people. So we'll assign you into groups of 3.
Okay, so somebody above is going to assign.
Or below. A servant, right?
But anyway, it will be assigned. It won't be a matter of choosing.
That's right.
It will be assigned.
And if you just show up, if you choose to come for the in-person group at 11 o'clock on Tuesdays, then that group is going to have their own discussion and they will find their own way. So, anything else for today, folks? Doesn't it feel like gardening weather? You want to get out and dig a little bit?
It's snowing.
I'm going to pray it gets nice and cold so you'll all stay in and do your Lent reflections. If you have any problem with the sign-ups or anything, just contact me. Are there any questions online, Jim? If there's anything that's worrisome about this for you or you're not sure it's right for you, send me an email, contact me. And it may be that another kind of program is the right way. But again, it's all up to you to be the experts on this journey. All right. Well, God bless you all. This is actually week 1. This is our first orientation and our first step in the journey. You'll get the email tonight with part of the forum in it and then the homework questions. And I just look forward to where we're going in this together. Parker Palmer said, don't tell your life what you want to do to it. Listen to your life for what it wants to do to you. And we're sort of spending some time listening to our lives. The Lord be with you. Let us pray. God, we thank you for the gift of life. Look at us here. We have these skills and abilities and joys and strengths. And we also wonder how you might use those to touch the world with love. We wonder what it means for us to let you touch the world with love through us. What does that mean? What does that look like? Keep our hearts open to this question. Help us to look at our lives with great tenderness and curiosity in the assurance that all is redeemed and all is loved. I ask you to bless us this day in Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen.
Go in peace to love and serve the Lord. I did joke that we're having seaweed crackers for Lent for the coffee hour, but I do see we have donuts back there.